Some mechanism.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Take your chair.
Thank you, sir.
So, how are you, Prasannaji?
So I'm fine.
Fine. So, you have done MBBS
Yes.
and interested in civil services.
Yes.
Why you are interested in civil services?
Sir, civil services offer wide opportunities as well as challenges. It has a promising career. It has also the stability in life, the power it extends to one to do something good in the society. That is the reason that I needed challenges as well as opportunities on a wider platform. So that's why I decided to switch the career to civil services.
Even your medical line has also a lot of diversity and challenges. Why not medical?
So, after my graduation, I thought about continuing my post-graduation in medicine, and in that way, I worked as a medical officer in my own field for 2 years in JJ Hospital, Mumbai. Sir, during that course of my journey in my job, I realized that I can do more with my life. The qualities I have that can be utilized in civil services in a more comprehensive and larger way.
Public health is a subset of a broader administration. So there I could utilize only for the health aspect. Here it's a broader aspect, includes the health also. And it's a wider information. And the civil servant, you said it enjoys power. Instead of that, you should use the word it enjoys authority. Authority is the legal power.
Yes.
The power can be with anyone, but the authority is with the civil servant enjoy the authority because they are having legal. Tell me something about the Beat district, the Beat city.
Sir, Beat district is in the Marathwada division of Maharashtra. It is it comes in the rain shadow area of Western Ghats. Historically, it was under the rules of the Nizam, so that's why the foundation of the institution is not that much good. The cooperative sector of the educational institutions are not there, so that's why it's a majorly an agrarian district. So it has also the migrant labor from Beed to the Western Maharashtra sugarcane field. That is also in news because of.
So we are also rewarded as the best medical officer, right?
Yes.
That's a great thing. And your hobbies are
Cooking.
cooking. So how cooking will help you in administration?
Sir, cooking is basically about connecting with people. The cooking requires the high precision and efficiency, the right quantity of food, the right quality of food, the right temperature at the right time. So our country is a resource scarce country where we need to utilize the resources to the maximum of their efficiency. Cooking has increased my efficiency to a level that it gives me confidence to solve any problem to the best of the efficiency.
It's fine. And so we also love to have pets. What pets you are having?
Sir, as I belong to a farmer background, there are many domesticated animals, dogs, cats, cow and buffalo that I have as my pets. Some poultry we used to have, but now we don't have poultry.
So how dealing with pets is at the same time gaining knowledge about them, gaining some personality traits. Can you share some personality traits you have learned from pets?
Definitely, sir. Sir, the pets first of all has increased the feeling of compassion, being compassionate in myself. They are also kind of stress busters. When you are near to them, they are because of their unconditional love and their support that they extend to the master. Also, the selflessness and the service extended by the cows or buffaloes, along with the calf, they also provide us milk. Plus, I have personally witnessed few moments of my personal grief or agony. My pets also shared them, though they didn't know what exactly was the cause, but they were also sad because I was sad. So this was something very new to me that increased my compassion and empathy.
Tell me certain programs of the government for the welfare and upliftment of the tribes.
Sir, the government of India is working since our post-independence. right from the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Warrior Elvin, they have been trying to devise a policy for the tribal upliftment. We had the policy of integration, hands off, eyes on approach for our tribals in some pockets, and for other tribals we have the since 2000. We have the national tribal ministry, a dedicated tribal ministry has been set up. We have a national commission for scheduled tribes, which is article 338A, and we developed for their economic integration with the mainstream economy, preserving their tribal genius. We have TriFed, Tribal Development Federation also, and many schemes like providing MSP for minor forest produce, the Hunar Haat, the Eklavya model of schooling. These are some kind of initiatives that government has taken. Also, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Ahar Yojana, specifically targeting to correct the malnutrition status in among tribals, is also a good step taken by the government.
Do you think there are certain steps now they need to be taken for furtherance of the tribal plight?
Sir, so there are few areas that we need to work on when it comes to the tribal empowerment. That is, we need to integrate them to the value chain which we have established in our today's business model. They are just the supplier of the raw material, and the major profit is taken away by the intermediaries. Also, the corporates which are mining on the natural resources in the tribal area, they are getting hugely profited. But on the other hand, the local tribals are not getting their due share. So we need to strengthen the PESA. We need to strengthen their Gram Panchayat, the third tier of their village council, so that they will have a considerable share. We have PESA, but the implementation is again a problem. So we need to implement. We have opened public primary health care centers, sub-centers, but doctors are reluctant to go. We need to incentivize the doctors and paramedicals so as to go and utilize the infrastructure created there for the tribal health. So we need a comprehensive plan, a multi-pronged approach for the upliftment of tribals.
What is COVID-19 and what's its impact on the global health? On the world economy, what its impact?
So COVID-19 is the new terminology given by World Health Organization to the formerly known as coronavirus. So this virus is specifically a respiratory infective virus which causes the respiratory ailments, and it is having a fatality rate. So this has been recently outbreak in the Hubei province of Wuhan region in the China, coastal China. Primarily, it was suspected that it has spread from the seafood route, but now evidences show that the wildlife trade market in China, used in traditional Chinese medicine, is the triggering factor for the spread of this virus. Now,
What is the name of that wildlife?
Sir, bat, all kind of wildlife, right from the bones of tigers to the seahorses, they illegally traffic in China because of their much demand due to the traditional Chinese medicine. So that was a cause of point of outbreak. It has around world globally registered cases of 80,000, and World Health Organization is just a step away from declaring it a global pandemic.
Currently, what is the status of COVID in the eye of WHO?
Sir, the WHO has recently said that it is a serious threat for a global health, and it will have not only the complication of health, but it also affect the economy, specifically of the developing country, as the virulence level of this virus is very high. So the spread will be rapid, and the developing countries will don't have that sufficient infrastructure to cope up with if there is a pandemic.
It is believed that India is still protected from this. What could be the reasons for that?
So Firstly, the efforts taken by the government of India, specifically by the External Affairs Ministry, which has not only uplifted many Indians which were trapped in the Hubei province, Wuhan region of China, but the strict measures of the quarantine done by our ministry, the vigilance, the sorting out, the isolation of the suspected patients, mostly in Kerala, that was also a good step. Plus, sir, our climatic condition is also a major factor. We have now the climate which is against the virulence of this virus, so that is also a major factor.
Very high temperature.
High temperature.
So now coming to the what's its impact in the current global economy?
Sir, the coronavirus, as the China is one of the major commercial giants, has now disrupted that engine. The products available from China are now being short supplied. That's why the inflation is faced by many of the importers. Also, sir, that this virus has led to the other developing part of the world, also in the Europe, which are now we have the economies which are integrated with each other. The sea lanes of the communication, which were once congested, are now today very less containers are there because of the fear of the transfer of the virus. So that
So
is
this is not only it led to economic slowdown, but also it has led to the global meltdown. That is the fall in the share market. So, is there any medicine which is direct counter it?
sir.
Are there possibilities?
So this is a group of family of viruses. They have this phenomenon of changing their genetic setup and makeup. So it's very difficult to specifically target it through a vaccine or through a medicine. Though some initial trials have been run throughout the world, specifically in Canada and in the South Korea, they are trying to develop some kind of medicine, antiviral suppressor medicine. But sir, that also has many of its side effects and the cost is very high for such medicine.
Tell me certain schemes of the government currently in India for the health of the people.
Sir, the government of India has launched an ambitious scheme of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, that also known as the Ayushman Bharat,
Yes.
which has two components. The first is the target of opening 1.5 lakh of health and wellness center for the preventive and primary health care, and for another is a insured scheme of Ayushman Bharat for the secondary and tertiary care, which is of critical in nature, trying to cover 10.54 crores of the family, roughly the 50 crores of the individuals which are the below poverty. So this is one step. Another step is, along with providing medical care, we are also improving the nutrition status, which we have given through Pradhan Mantri Poshan Abhiyan. We have revised the National Tuberculosis Control Program. We have set a very strict and tough, ambitious goal of eliminating the tuberculosis by 2025. Also, the malaria by 2025. We have also come again with the Eat Healthy campaign, with the policy for controlling the non-communicable disease. Because sir, India is in a very tricky situation where we have double burden of the diseases. At one hand, we have increasing number of infectious diseases, and on other hand, we have the increasing number of non-communicable diseases. On one hand, we have malnutrition, and on other hand, we have overnutrition. So that's why we need a comprehensive strategy.
There are certain kinds of medical instruments which are imported by India. So India has increased the import duty on that, and that led to some lack of understanding between India and US. Can you throw light on it?
Yes, sir. Sir, the recent visit by the United States President also highlighted the same issue, that the implants, the orthopedic implants and the cardiac stents, which are specifically imported through the United States, the drug-coated cardiac stents, we have increased the tariff also, and we have kept their prices. So the capping of the prices so as to meet the affordability and the accessibility of our common masses, that has been a contentious issue for the American producers, as they say that we are running out of competition and our profit margin is decreasing.
Now, there was a visit of the US President. What were the PET signed between India and US?
So, majorly it was a defense deal. We have signed $3 billion of defense deal. We are now we will be procuring now the MH Navy helicopters, commonly called Romeo, and we will also Apache attack helicopters for the difficult terrains. These were the two acts that were signed, sir.
How Apache is different from Romeo? And what is the difference in the usages?
Sir, I don't have that sufficient knowledge, but the Romeo helicopters are essentially for the Navy purposes, which can also be used for Navy's defense, shooting down the submarines and that. And Apache attack helicopters is for Army and difficult terrains.
Insurgency, counter-insurgency, infiltration, that kind of. Is this defense deal something to have with the Quad? Quad group, what is Quad?
Sir, Quad is a strategic grouping proposed back by Mr. Shinzo Abe of Japan. This is a proposed grouping between India, United States, Japan and Australia. Sir, though it speaks about upholding the multipolarity of world and countering the hegemonic practices by China in the South China Sea and now allegedly in Indian Ocean also. This was the grouping that is coming up, but the formal institution is yet to be set up.
You took the name of a Japanese hat. One kind of terminology is related with him, that is Abeism. So what is that Abeism in terms of economy?
Sir, post subprime crisis of the world of 2008, Mr. Abe has proposed a state intervention in the economy called as Abenomics, famously called as Abenomics. That is has to something to do with the liberalizing the market at one hand, but also supporting the economic dwarfs or the vulnerable small MSMEs by the state on the other hand. It is also the mix of capitalism plus state controlled economy. It is a mix of that. What we are practicing in India, that was somewhat proposed by Mr. Abe in Abenomics, that state intervention in free market.
So there was a monetary ease by Mr. Abe and there was a fiscal stimulus. These were the pillars of Abenomics. So what you mean by the term fiscal stimulus and how fiscal stimulus is different from fiscal consolidation?
Sir, in the current economic slowdown facing by the globe and also by our country, the fiscal stimulus is the increasing of the government expenditure, the injecting of the money, the liquidity, the capital and cash in the markets. That is a fiscal stimulus so that the consumption will rise. The income will rise and the consumption will rise, so that the consumption rises, so demand rises. Thus manufacturing and jobs are created and the virtuous cycle of economy is set. This is the fiscal stimulus. But sir, it is a short-term measure because if done in long term, it can have its deleterious effect on economy. So fiscal consolidation is also another thing where the government will consolidate the capital and will control the inflation as well as the government spending, so that the crowding out effect is not happened and private sector have an equal access to the credit, which is also very driving engine of economy. The private investment will grow.
So in fiscal stimulus, not only some concessions in taxes are there, but also there is an increase in public spending, and that spending should be to curb the economic slowdown and it should not lead to the inflation situation. Whereas you rightly said that in fiscal consolidation there are other steps to as far as possible to increase the income of the government through various taxes, not by actually enhancing the taxes, but enhancing maybe the tax caps and to increase the efficiency, and there may be some other steps. Have you heard the term public-private partnership? So currently, what is the PPP policy of the government of India?
So current policy I have to read.
Just go through what are the general, how government supports the PPP.
There are three models as I have read. The build, operate, transfer,
Then I'm not asking you to know. What is the policy of the government? Like there is a viability gap funding scheme. Gap funding. There is a easy approval of the PPP projects at the cabinet level, and there are 100% FDIs which are permitted. So this is how government also wants to, make a streamlined policy with the PPP. There is a hybrid annuity model in PPP. What is it?
Sir, this that I have to read upon, sir.
Acha, okay. Like in PPP, sometimes there may be the private builds, the private may own or it may manage the thing as a tenant. It may transfer, it may not transfer. There are different setups. Like sometime when there is a national highway projects, so government wants to go for with the hybrid annuity model, in which government can pay a part, say 40% part, say within 5 years, and rest government can pay in installment. So here government takes up. This is the hybrid annuity model.
Thanks.
So what is NPA currently? What is NPA and how they are different from stressed assets?
Sir, stressed assets are for the stress assets when when the stressed assets are built up for the certain amount of time, they turn into NPAs, specifically for 90 days on either the interest payment or the
Stressed assets are the broader term. It contains NPA plus the restructured loans plus the waived off loans. It's a broader term. NPA is a part of it. This is the difference. So, what is the current volume of NPA in our country?
so current
Roughly current volume.
Sir, the public sector banks are facing somewhere between 9.5 to 11% of NPAs, but the NBFCs are projected that they are facing higher NPAs.
What you said, 9 to 10%?
But
Public sector bank, they are having the 80 to 90% of the total NPA. Private is having just 10% of the NPA. Private is having 10% of the NPA and the public sector banks are having 80 to 90% of the share in the NPA. They are having a large share. So there are number of solutions to reduce NPA. Can you name some 3 solutions?
sir, the solutions are suggested by the RBI panel, that goes the asset management company, one, which we will also informally call as bad bank, that will take up the stressed assets or the NPAs and then they will go for the resolution. Another step is the IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, as rolled out by the Government of India. That has to do with the resolution of the assets within 270 days. The main compelling feature of this act is that the management stays with the government and not with the board. So that's why it has got a good outcome. And third, sir, for resolution of stressed asset, the mission Indradhanush was launched by the RBI.
What is Mission Indradhanush?
Sir, details I have.
Refinancing. So which body is the principal regulator in case of insolvency and bankruptcy in India?
Body,
The principal
NCLAT, National Company Law.
and which is the principal adjudicator in our country?
Sir, I have put it
No. The principal regulator for such cases is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, that is IBBI, that is the regulatory body. It is the principal regulatory body to make rules and regulations for the professionals, for the companies and for the procedure related. And the chief adjudicating body related with such matter there are 2. One is the debt recovery tribunal for non-corporate sector, and for corporate sector that is NCLT, National Company Law. You must have heard all these things. Only what we have to unite. There is a regulator, supreme regulator. There is a supreme adjudicator. So for adjudicating, there are two bodies. And regulator, there is IBI. Right? So currently, from 1990s, we are seeing the globalization. But recently, we have seen number of incidences of deglobalization. Can you tell me certain incidences of deglobalization going on in the world?
Sir, there has been current trend of backlash against globalization, and ironically, it came from the very countries that were once proponent of the globalization, the West and the Europe. The global trade war between the two giants of USA and China. The core reason being the huge trade imbalance in the favor of Chinese. That was the first step towards the backlash against globalization. The rising protectionist measures, the counter tariff, the non-tariff barrier, increasing the non-tariff barriers like phytosanitary measures or the quality requirement. This is also a trick to increase the protectionist measure in a legal framework. Sir, also we have seen the strict stringent of the H1B visa by the USA. That deter our valuable human resource from getting a job in the abroad. That also affected. Sir, the rising the stricting the citizenship norms by nearly every country. The Brexit is another example which has shown that they are not in tune with globalization anymore, and they believe in the bilateral rather than multilateral thing.
Currently, just few days back, India has refused to join a regional group. What is that regional group and why we can refuse to join?
Sir, it was about the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Sir, the India was thinking to join but is reluctant to join and hence refused because the domestic interests were at the stake. The grouping, the RCEP grouping, India already have huge trade imbalances with the most of the countries of that group, and opening up the markets for them, specifically for China, will lead for the huge trade distortion and harming our domestic industry. For example, the New Zealand and the Australia have the prairie grasslands and the open grasslands. They have hugely subsidized dairy market, which is not available for our farmers and dairy producers. So they can flood their dairy products on a very short price in our market, thus replacing and our already distressed farmers. So these were some of the economic as well as we have some strategic concerns also. When it comes to China, India plays a safe ball. There are strategic and national security concerns. That is also an angle, sir. So that's why we refuse to join this RCEP.
So is it again you can say it's another example of deglobalization?
Sir, India always upholds the need of multipolarity of world and a rule-based world order. Sir, as far as this RCEP is concerned, we have some economic as well as strategic concerns. So it should come between the backlash against globalization and protectionism, but not absolute nothing, but a midpoint between them.
Currently, tell me any 3 global conflicts going on in the world, which are political in nature.
Sir, the Syrian crisis led by the President Assad on one side with Russia backing him, the two-way role played by the Turkey in it, the withdrawal of US forces leaving the Kurds helpless. This is the one major crisis going around. It is another conflict, and the third conflict is going majorly in Iran and the Houthis in the Yemen. That is the third conflict going. The Taliban is about to has already signed the peace deal. So that is now out of the conflict category.
What about Turk and Kurdish
Sir, Kurdish are the most displaced ethnic group of people without any state of their own. They are the population is majorly in Syria, but also on the borders of Turkey and Iraq. The Turkish forces led by Mr. Recep Erdogan, they see the liberation movements or of the Kurdish as the terrorist act. So that's why they are against them, and they also finance some of the militia which are against the Kurds informally or allegedly they finance.
What are the solution of the Kurd problem? Any two solutions?
Sir, firstly, the Kurds were the loyal fighters against the fight against ISIS for the United States. So it's the onus on the United States that they should pay back their help as a mark of courtesy by deploying their troops there to protect the Kurds now. Sir, another thing is there need to be an intervention by the United Nations for the as far as the human rights violation are concerned. And peacekeeping forces can be one good initiative.
They can be enhanced on the way of the autonomy, like what the Iraq has done to the Iraqi Kurds.
Yes.
And finally, the last question: how India can use Hong Kong unrest in order to negotiate with China?
Sir, Hong Kong is a special autonomous zone or special economic zone as far as mainland China is
SAR, Special Administrative Region.
special administrative region. It was a former British colony, and till 2047 that period still lies. Sir, India can definitely coordinate with this economic giant of the East Asia, the Hong Kong, for propagating the values of democracy. We can definitely support their effort and voice on the United Nations platform that for the upholding of the democratic rights of those people as they want it.
Okay, you have to use it.